I'm really Olson. My name is Ryan Olson, and we're going to have a discussion today about Jamaica. And these are two people I'm giving my presentation to.
I am Lauren Carroll. I'm from Jamaica, California, and I'm an elementary education major.
I'm Natalie Peterson, and I'm from Marysville, Washington, and I'm studying health science.
Perfect. All right, so we're going to talk about Jamaica. You guys have a chance to look at my website and ask some questions. I know it was an amazing website, so no need to thank me. But first we're going to talk about globalization. Do you remember that page about globalization?
Yes.
Cool. So on it, there was a description of different categories of globalization. And it's from this guy that gave a speech and wrote a book all about it. And he talks about how there's three levels. First, globalization 1.0 kind of refers back to the day when countries like globalized to the rest of the world by way of like boats, and then like went and took over a country or something like that. And that's how they like got their influence of their country around the rest of the world, right? And then globalization 2.0 has to do more with businesses going like international things like that. That's why you find McDonald's and all over the world and things like that. That's an example of globalization 2.0. And then when he realized there's now a newer level of globalization, and it's more focused on an individual, and a lot of it has to do with internet access. And how, for example, I have a friend from a small town in New Mexico that does movie reviews. And he like has a blog on the internet, and he's got thousands of viewers from all over the world. And he didn't really advertise or anything like that, just like through Facebook and things like that spread. And I don't even know why anyone cares about his opinion, but he's got people from all over the world looking at his reviews on movies. So that's an example of how countries are now going to a 3.0 globalization. And it's done by not corporations, but individuals. So now we've talked about that a little bit. Obviously, what would you think the United States would be at?
3.03.
Yeah, right. Well, how about like a country? Think of a country that might be at a 1.0.
Maybe like in Africa.
Yeah, some countries in
I don't
Africa.
think I know enough, but Philippines.
Okay. No, it's totally fair enough.
Really rural.
Yeah, you think of like some place you never heard of.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about after what you read about Jamaica and what you previously know from Cool Runnings and any other Bob Marley ideas, what would you think or expect Jamaica to be at?
I think agree, just because of I think it's about having internet available to like 50% of the population.
Yeah.
Well, it's not everyone, so I don't know if that changes things. But.
So I think before I read about information about Jamaica, I think as soon as I heard about the different categories of globalization, I thought it's probably a 2.0. But I think that's just because I feel like it's a little less developed and things like that. But as I read a little bit more about Jamaica's globalization, I realized that even a lesser developed country can still be a 3.0 because it doesn't matter exactly on the whole government's economy or things like that, but it narrows down to an individual. So that's really cool. So I think that Jamaica is a 3.0 because, as you mentioned in my website, it talks about how over 50% of people have access to internet. So I mean, that's over 50% of Jamaicans can influence someone else around the world or something like that. So, so that's a little bit about globalization in Jamaica. And two things I wanted to cover while talking about globalization is this thing called the dialect, the local and global. Kind of a mouthful. But basically, what the dialectic, the local and global means is the way I've understood it is something that's like really like a culture of a small community or a country or something like that manages to spread out and be like globalized, something like that. So I'll give you two examples of Jamaican dialectics of local and global. One's reggae music. Like that is strictly from Jamaica, right?
Yeah.
It didn't start anywhere else or anything like that. It's very Jamaican and part of their culture. So when it first started, it was just what Jamaicans listened to. But thanks to Bob Marley, who everyone's heard of, now it's globalized. It's everywhere, all over the world. And so just Bob Marley alone has been able to put Jamaica on the map. And reggae music puts Jamaica on the map like that. And then another example, this one you may or may not have heard of before. Ever heard of the Rastafari movement?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's also a Jamaican thing, kind of a religion, culture, belief, way of living kind of thing. And also, again, thanks to Bob Marley, who was part of the Rastafari movement. Whereas it was something very local, just in a tight unit in Jamaica, now has thousands of members all over the world. So here's two examples of how this dialect of local and global, like Jamaica, has been able to globalize all around the world. Okay. All right. So anything else? Any questions? Maybe globalization. Probably finding down. No problem. Cool. I think next we'll talk about the Millennium Development Goals. Let me get to the website so you guys can be reminded on all the 8 of them. So there's 8 of them, 8 of these goals, and they were designed by the UN. I can't quite remember. 1980. I might be making that up. Either way, they were intended to be finished by or completed by 2015. Basically, a bunch of countries from all around the world that are underdeveloped got together and set these goals. So the 8 of them, there's eradicate extreme poverty and hunger, achieve universal primary education, promote gender equality and empower women, reduce child mortality, improve maternal health, combat HIV, AIDS, malaria, and other diseases, ensure environmental sustainability, and develop a global partnership for development. So, they're going to, like, these goals expire next year kind of thing. Do any of those goals stick out to you? Do you remember while reading? I think what we talked about in the questions. I think you both
achieve universal primary education.
Yeah, actually, I remember in the emails you guys sent, both of you talked about dropout rates in particular, and also empowering women. Something I found after looking at your guys' responses about empowering women. So Jamaica's doing pretty good in that, in certain aspects at least. They have a female president, so that's kind of cool. And I found this award that was given to Jamaica by the European Union. And it says in this article, first paragraph, says Jamaica has been honored by the European Union for its role in the empowerment of women, and in particular for closing the gender gap in terms of women who work in public administration. So it's kind of cool that Jamaica is kind of, at least compared to other countries, underdeveloped countries, they're kind of pushing away towards that. And I think having a female president is a big sign of that. We don't even have a female president.
No.
And there's still tons of debate on whether we should or not. So, even though there should be debate. Yeah, looking at that. But as you also read, we talked about kind of going back to education as well. Dropout levels are big, but it seems like they're mostly, it's boys that are dropping out, and girls. Any ideas what you think might be causing that?
Maybe they're dropping out to work instead. Maybe
Yeah.
they just don't find education as important as they probably should.
Because girls probably want to find a place in government, having more of a say. So maybe
No,
they get more education.
That's a really good point too. Yeah, I think both of those are right. Obviously, it's kind of like the guy's got to go and support the family in some way. So it's like, all right, as soon as this boy turns of age, we go get him a job and he can bring in some money for the family. So that kind of stinks that they have that view. And I've seen it in other parts of the world as well. This is just a problem that Jamaica has. And then, I think also it has to do with a little bit of maybe Jamaica's doing really good with like that influence of empowering women and closing that gender gap. So girls are doing a little bit better in education. I guess as an educated perspective, what do you think? I don't know. What do you think Jamaica could do to improve that balance or get more guys to stay in school and things like that?
Well, I'm just thinking, I feel like in America, the more education you have, the more opportunities you have for jobs, but not like that as much in Jamaica because they're dropping out. Are they getting a lesser paid job?
That's probably it. I mean, yeah, you're totally right. In America, you get a degree, you have a lot better opportunities and things like that. But in an underdeveloped country, it might not be necessarily the same. I'm sure there are opportunities for people to have degrees, but I think a lot of people are more like, we need the money now. We're gonna go work in the fields. We're gonna go in Jamaica. They probably go work at like resorts and or like cleaning services and things like that. And so it's more like they see that need right away instead of, I don't know. I think going to get an education is definitely a time investment, right?
Yeah.
So some people might struggle with that. So here's the problem with that, with education in Jamaica. Jamaica's got like some serious debt right now, and has for the past few years. And so the country, they've got billions of dollars to pay back to other countries and corporations and things like that. So a lot of the money, first of all, the biggest income for Jamaica comes from tourism. So all the money that comes in from that, they're going most of it to pay off the debt. So if you were president of Jamaica, which girls could be because you're women, how would you handle that? Would you say we need to put off this debt and worry about it later, worry on social issues, or would you say, all right, we need to get rid of this debt as soon as we can, and then work on our social issues like healthcare, education, crime / fighting drug? Like, what do you think? It's a tough question, and there's no easy answer.
It's obviously not going to be in debt because you don't know what's going to be ahead, and you don't know if the country's going to get more in debt. So I think maybe there's a balance between trying to get out of debt and still trying to meet those goals.
Definitely. Yeah. So at least I don't know. In my own opinion, I don't know if Jamaica's doing a great job in balancing. And I think there's got to be some kind of balance there somewhere. But there's so many problems in Jamaica right now that they're not able to face because they've got this economy problem.
Are they using all this resort money for paying off their debts?
Not all of it, but and they have other ways. Like the country has other industries besides tourism, but nothing close to tourism. So, but yeah, that's the problem. That most of what the country earns, they're going towards this huge debt problem, which they're like not even close to covering it right now. So because of that, law enforcement doesn't get as much funding, education doesn't get as much funding. So I don't know. If it were me, again, you have to find some kind of balance. But it's kind of like if we have more educated people, I feel like the country would develop more jobs would be created. That would help boost the economy. So it's kind of an investment as well. Like maybe hopefully in the future we can use like the potential that like the younger generation has to come and bring in more economic support. But at the same time, you don't know what's going to happen. Say some huge disaster comes in, which Jamaica's in the Caribbean, hotspot for hurricane, things like that. So it's kind of rough. Like you don't know what to expect, especially with all the economic problems going around in the world. So it's tricky. But that's one of the big social issues going on in Jamaica right now. They have to pay this debt. They can't face their other problems, stuff like that. All right, let's see what else we want to talk about. Okay, we can look at it here in the U.S. perspective as well. I'm talking about global development in the U.S. The goals are going to be completed or expired at least in 2015, and then the UN's they're coming up with new goals and things like that. As far as globalization, there's partnerships, businesses with all over the world. If you were the U.S. president, maybe take your minds off Jamaica for a second. What would you do? What do you think would be good for the U.S. president as far as taking on global development just for the U.S.? What things do we need to focus on? Do you think we need to focus on things like trade? So sorry, this is kind of a random question. And you're kind of blindsided by it. Do you think trade needs to improve? Do we need to increase relationships with allies? Things like that. Do you think we need to find quicker, better solutions for like our borders, or should we make it easier for immigrants to come into the U.S.? What do you guys think? Kind of, totally blindsided with your question. Let's look at it this way. Say you're a Jamaican and you live in poverty, and someone's got a ticket for you to get into the U.S. Illegally. Do you think, as a Jamaican, do you think that's a good idea?
We might get more opportunities.
Definitely.
Yeah, because there's more economic stability, I feel like.
Gotcha.
More access to a lot of things like that.
Perfect. All right, now look at the president's perspective.
It's tough for people who are already living in America.
Yeah.
Because we're all trying to get most out of.
Definitely. So, yeah, tricky question. Sorry I brought it up. I don't know if I have an answer either for it. I struggle with that idea. I think America is definitely a land of opportunity. I think it's something we should control and not just, I don't know, a free open border causes a lot of problems and things like that. So, yeah, so, anyways, we're just going to move on from that. Let's see. Okay, so you're a health science major, an education major, and having received an education in those respective fields, what do you think? What knowledge are you guys gaining that you think could benefit a country like Jamaica? We'll start with health science.
Okay. I think what came to my mind, at least when I was going through website stuff, was like diseases, so expired diseases, or like I think the website mentioned like water treatment, like they seem to be doing okay with that, but there's something about if they were to be hit with like a big tropical storm or something like that, there wasn't much of protection against that. So I think, at least from my perspective, like maybe somehow solving that problem more with diseases and like spread of diseases, educating the population on how it's spread or how to avoid it and like good hygiene and stuff like that. Because I don't know, you can know about a disease and like be afraid about getting it, but if you know like how you could get it and how it's spread, I think that'd be important to know.
Yeah. No, definitely. That is kind of from what I've read in the progress for the goals. What they're trying to do, especially with diseases like AIDS, I think some people just aren't educated enough about it and don't know. So they're trying to increase, like, talking to youth, especially in schools and stuff like that. So yeah, no, I think that's a great idea, and just so many of these diseases are preventable.
Yeah.
But everyone just doesn't know about it. How about education?
So I think you had this quote on your website, the author of that book, about how literacy is really high,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been taught in like my literacy classes that literacy is so important because text is all around us, and that's how you survive in life. Not only like will it help you in like getting a job, but like it even has to do with like health risks and everything, and like being able to read the signs of the road and the dangers and stuff like that. Text is all around us, right? So I think getting teachers in there that are more educated, maybe approaching it differently. I don't know enough about how they're approaching it, but maybe they need to find a way to, I don't know, get the literacy.
Yeah, no, I think in your response to the email, you talked about one of the perspectives that was interesting to you. One was education, one was psychological. And I think that's a good combination, especially for educating teachers on how to educate kids in increasing their psychological and cognitive abilities. And being able to do that, they'll be able to understand things better in school, and they'll learn better, and things will come easier for them. And obviously, being literate is a key part of that. Cool, guys. So we're going to close up with one last topic. At the beginning of the first day of my class, our teacher gave us $1. And it's out of his own pocket. And it's basically we are supposed to do research and find what we want to, how we want to donate that to our specific countries. So I've done a little bit of research and had to figure out what I wanted to donate it to. So I think, and you read about what I'm going to donate to on Jamaica, on the website for Jamaica. But I guess my question to you guys is, if you had $1,000, or let's just say like a really substantial, large amount of money that you like would donate to one thing, and it doesn't necessarily have to be specifically of Jamaica, but to an underdeveloped country, what would you donate it to?
Probably like what I talked about earlier about like health education and like just ways to help with hygiene in other countries to avoid a lot of diseases that you can.
Yeah.
Like teaching them that that's important.
And I would have to say education, which also goes along with health education.
Yeah.
So we're all having more an awareness.
Yeah. So as you read on my website, something we didn't really touch on too much here. Jamaica has, in the Caribbean and Central America, have a huge crime problem right now with drug trade. And that is associated with dropout rates for boys. We should have discussed that as well. Some of the reasons why guys are dropping out. Getting involved in gangs and violence and drug trade. And so I thought, well, what leads to that? I think someone that's educated will know to avoid that. And so I also put my development dollar towards education because I think it will solve, I think that's just the foundation to solve any kind of problem, is knowing how to solve it, whether it's health education, whether it's education on social issues, on economic issues, and education and being smart enough to know to avoid gangs and violence and things like that. So I think that my thought process was that going towards education, finding ways to make school more effective on the youth and the younger generation, and I don't know, make it more interesting. Because some of these guys are like in shacks and things like that. So putting a higher emphasis in quality of education, I think, would help and affect Jamaica a lot. So I know what that is. But we are about done. And thank you so much for presenting and talking with me about this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.